The following podcast was recorded on Thursday, November 3rd, 2022, featuring Jim Bianco of Bianco Research. To hear the podcast in real time, you can sign up for a free trial at biancoresearch.com or arborresearch.com, or by emailing Gus Handler directly at gus.handler@arborresearch.com. You can also call Arbor Research and Trading at 1-800-606-1872. Thanks for your time and enjoy the podcast. Welcome everyone to the latest edition of Talking Data. I'm your host, Kristen Radosh with Arbor Research and Trading, joined today by our commentator, Jim Bianco of Bianco Research. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
Today, Jim gives us an update on midterm elections. Jim, to get us started, what is the general ballot and what does it say?
The generic ballot, this is the first chart, is a question that they ask a lot of pollsters where they just ask you, are you going to vote for a Republican or a Democrat? They don't specify which race or they don't specify when, they just ask you in general. And so the red line on the top shows you the people that respond Republican, and the blue line is Democrat, and the green line below is just the spread between the two. This is an aggregation from the website 538, which is run by Nate Silver. So this is all of the generic polls from different polling organizations aggregated together. Now, a couple things jump out at this. You can see that starting middle of 21, the green line in the bottom panel went negative. That's positive for Republicans. A positive number is positive for Democrats. Negative number is positive for Republicans. So then all of a sudden, starting this summer and into late September, it went back in favor of the Democrats. And about 6 weeks ago or so, it started to reverse back in favor of Republicans. And you can see that with the red line on the top panel. And that means that more people are saying they're going to vote for Republicans than any point during this election cycle. Now, as a tease to the next bullet point, I'll point out that historically, this poll tends to underreport the out of favor party. So that is, or the minority party. That is the Republicans right now. They should typically outperform. When the Democrats are in the minority, they typically outperform. But given that, it tends to be that the Republican outperformance is bigger than the Democrat outperformance. And we'll talk about that in the next bullet points.
What are the betting markets and models saying about the House and the Senate?
So there's two things the way you can look at this. So this chart has several lines on it, and this is for the House. Let me start on the bottom. The green line, the orange line, and the blue line are the three versions of models put together by 538. They do fantastic modeling work over at Nate Silver's group. The green line is what they call their light model. If we just take the polls themselves and nothing else, and we express that as a probability, what does it show? The orange line says we take the polls, plus we add in things like fundraising, early voting, prior history within each congressional district or each state of how they voted, and we adjust the polls for that. And then the blue line does the same thing as the orange line, which is called the classic model. The blue line is the deluxe model. It adds in the Cook Report's expert weightings on where they think that the polls are going to show. Now, what you see out of this is that each individual poll, whether you go from light, which is in green, to classic, which is in orange, to deluxe, which is in blue, the Republicans get better and better. And I'll talk about the betting market in a second. But this is important because Nate Silver and another Nate Cohn at the New York Times have talked about this matter-of-factly. And by the way, let's remember, these are progressive organizations. So this is not asking Fox News their opinion. And they've said matter-of-factly, we understand that the polls alone undersample, underappreciate the strength of Republicans. Now, part of that is because a lot of Republicans won't answer pollsters, especially Trump supporters. They go out of their way to just hang up on pollsters. And so that Trump supporters vote, but they don't talk to pollsters. So the pollsters miss them. And that's why the Republicans in 2016 and 2020 seemed to surprise by doing better than they thought. The final one in this chart is the brown line. and that is the betting market. I use Predicted. It's been around for 10 years. There's Kalshi, there's Polymarket, there's the London bookies. There's plenty of betting markets, but if they have any kind of volume, they all say the same thing. And I've looked at them, they all largely do say the same thing. And that's even higher, that the bettors that are putting their money on the line are saying that the Republicans have an even better choice. Now, this is the House. You'll notice that the least poll is the light model, which is the polls only. It's giving the Republicans a 77% chance of becoming the majority in the House after next Tuesday's election. And the bettors are giving them a 91% chance. So all we're arguing is a difference in conviction, not an outcome. But if you look at the Senate, that's the next chart. Same thing. The polls alone say that the Democrats should hold the majority of the Senate because they're 44%, the green line. That's the light model, the polls alone. But notice it's going straight up. If you add in, again, for the classic model, which is in orange, you add in fundraising, prior history of the district or the state, add in the flows of early balloting, they do a little bit better at 46%. Add in the expert ratings, they're over 50% at 53%. And the bettors, the brown line, are at 74%. So this is a difference of outcome. And this is what a lot of the modelers expect, that if you go with polls alone, because you're missing a lot of Republicans who won't talk to pollsters, they should outperform, and they think that they'll outperform enough in order to take the majority. But it might be a long night because it's going to be, there's a number of races that are very, very close right now. So bottom line with this is the House definitely is looking by all available information that it should go to the Republicans. The Senate is a toss-up to a slight Republican lean.
Jim, what is the latest on the important Senate races?
So there's about 5 to 7 important Senate races, and I'm going to highlight the 5 most watched ones, and I'm going to use the betting market predicted as my metric. So if we jump to the first chart, you'll see that it shows in green. They usually ask the question generically, is the Republican going to win in Georgia? And anybody who's followed politics knows that the Republican is the former Heisman Trophy winner, Herschel Walker. And then they ask, is the Republican going to win in Pennsylvania? And that's the television host, Dr. Emmett Moss, but they don't ask by name, they just ask by party. And they're both trading above 50% right now. And they've both recently moved above 50% in the last couple of weeks. If you go to, but notice before we jump to the next chart, they're still in the low 60s. So I tend to use as a metric that if you're kind of between 33 and 66%, that you're kind of in a broad range of toss up. Above 66%, you would be in a favored, or below 33, you'd be in another favored in the opposite direction. So they're kind of at the upper end of toss up. And if you go to the next chart, that shows 3 other important races. Wisconsin, Ron Johnson is running in Wisconsin. He's the incumbent. He's at 87% now, so he's definitely favored to win. Nevada, that is at 75%, so that's moved beyond the toss-up phase. And probably the closest race is in Arizona. That's Mark Kelly, the Democrat incumbent, against Blythe Masters, who's running against him. The betting market has that at 52. That race could be a long night. It's also a West Coast, Pacific Coast time zone. It might come down to that race as to whether or not the Republicans get 51% in the House and take the majority. So that might become a late night. The Republicans are trading above 50% in all of these races, but in a couple of them, Arizona and in Georgia and in Pennsylvania, they're not well above 50% enough that you could say that, oh yeah, they should feel very comfortable about their chances going into election night. Now, I'd rather be above 50% than below 50%, and they are above 50%, but it is still very narrow and still, it is still going to be more or less what the pollsters call a toss-up race. So it's very, very close in the Senate, especially when it comes to Arizona. And it very well might come down to that Arizona race if everything else breaks as we think.
Well, Jim, thank you for your thoughts today, and thank you everyone for joining us. If you have any questions on Arbor Research, Bianco Research, or Arbor Data Science, you can contact us by emailing Gus Handler at gus.handler@arborresearch.com. Thanks everyone, and have a great day.